What's up, YouTube? We are live. I'm Atheist, your host, and this is Reason, religiously educated atheists, secularists, and other non-theists. So before we begin today, we have a couple of announcements. Number one, we have a new website. It is the secularroundtable.com. I would have tried to make it something with Reason, but guess what? Reason is so common that everybody already took every domain name there was. Number two on announcements, we have T-shirts. Woo! So here's our new T-shirt and the T-shirt design. The Godless Engineer and Prototype Atheist should have their T-shirts by next week's episode, but they are also up for sale on our website, thesecularroundtable.com. Announcement number three, Glenn, aka Godless Glenn, may not be with us as much as we originally had planned and thought. So, needless to say, our primary members now are me, Aeolus, your favorite atheist, Godless Engineer, and the Prototype Atheist. So with those announcements being made, today we're going to be talking about the historicity of Jesus.
Yeah, thanks. I finally got online here using my phone anyways. But I did want to mention Josephus as well, and if I could just quickly, I apologize if this has already been gone over because I've been kind of in and out here trying to fix my issues, but I just wanted to read the Testimonium Flavianum that is kind of, the passage that out of the Antiquity of the Jews, which was written by Josephus, that is kind of referenced by people as proof that Jesus existed. And basically, the Antiquity of the Jews is an entire history of the Jews, and it's basically it's Josephus trying to state a case for them because even back then during his time there was a lot of animus and kind of anti-Semitism and things like that against the Jews, and he was trying to state the case in favor of them, and so basically the passage out of there is about this time there lived Jesus, a wise man, if indeed one ought to call him a man. For he was one who performed surprising deeds and was a teacher of such people as accept the truth gladly. He won over many Jews and many of the Greeks. He was the Christ, and when upon the accusation of the principal men among us, Pilate had condemned him to the cross, those who had first come to love him did not cease. He appeared to them spending a third day restored to life, for the prophets of God had foretold these things and 1,000 other marvels about him, and the tribe of the Christians, so called after him, has still to this day not disappeared. Now, to me, I have a little bit different, perspective or take on this. I'm not a historian or anything, but to me, this doesn't sound like he's describing, actual events that have happened. To me, he is simply trying to explain what the Christians believe. He's saying, okay, there's this tribe of Christians, to this day, they're still called that, and they follow this sort of belief system, and this is what they believe about, the Christ or about this Jesus figure. So, it could possibly be that he thought that a Jesus, an actual man, a prophet during that time existed, but that he wasn't divine. He's just kind of explaining what the Christians believe about this Jesus. So I think that's really the crux of the issue is, did a historical person named Jesus or, Yeshua or Joshua exist during this time that actually did some of these things? It's something certainly interesting to discuss and talk about and consider. That's not an uncommon name, really, because when you get down to it, Jesus is pretty much the name is Joshua. And obviously there would have been more than one person named that who could have even been a prophet among the Jews and things of that nature. So, in getting back to Bart Ehrman's position, he basically likes to point out that there's no external writings, outside of the Bible in the first century that mention Jesus at all. And this mention of Jesus by Josephus is kind of one of the earliest mentions outside of the Bible that people reference. And that's pretty interesting right there because first of all, we know that the Gospels were written decades after Jesus allegedly lived and died, and we know that they were kind of built upon each other. The first one was written, and then the next one, and the next one, they kind of used the previous versions as templates, and you can kind of see how they built on one another. and how they have some things that were embellished or things that ended up being changed, and things that really aren't mentioned elsewhere, external to the Bible. For example, in one of the Gospels, I think it's Luke, there's a census which explains why Mary and Joseph went to Bethlehem to have Jesus born, to fulfill the prophecy about the Messiah. So that census is not mentioned anywhere else in any of the other Gospels or external to the Bible. So that kind of tells us that they were trying their hardest to explain why Mary and Joseph would have gotten to Bethlehem, and then that's why that prophecy was fulfilled about the Messiah being born there. And another one is the gospel that explains how Herod ordered all the boys under 2 years old to be slaughtered, and that doesn't appear in any of the other gospels, and that doesn't appear outside of the Bible either. So things like that. And then also there's another prophecy about the Messiah coming into town upon a donkey, and they really made these strained efforts to get Jesus to come into town on a donkey, even to the point where one of the Gospels says that he rode in upon multiple donkeys, which is just kind of absurd and ridiculous, but it kind of gives us clues as to they were trying to make this Jesus figure, whether he existed or not, kind of fit the prophecies about the Messiah and make him the Messiah. So to me, whether or not an actual man named Jesus or Yeshua during that time period actually existed, I don't really try to argue that with people when I'm trying to just debate with theists about their religion, as far as is Christianity true, did Jesus perform miracles, is he a divine incarnate deity or anything of that nature. It's not something I really try to focus on all too much, because there seems to be a lot of people and a lot of historians who think that this was an actual person, although there is some debate about it still. But to me, I don't try to focus on that, because if especially Christians, they're going to be convinced that minimally there was this person, this man that existed. So I don't like to try to go down that route with them. I try to focus on the other things and demonstrate why the claims about this man are just simply not true. But I do agree that this is an interesting topic to discuss, like for these purposes, because obviously it's something important. If not only would he be a historical figure, but he would be, the most important really historical figure ever in human history. And to not have any solid evidence about his existence is really quite striking. And I think that tells us a lot, really. I mean, I guess you could argue that maybe he was so controversial and so disliked and so hated that maybe they tried to suppress any record of his existence or anything like that. I suppose you can make an argument along those lines. But to me, I don't know one way or the other. I really don't know enough about it to say personally, but it's definitely something interesting to discuss for sure. Yeah, I just wanted to point out, there's also this perspective, which I don't know if it's from Ehrman or not, so if you guys happen to know, you can, correct me or, confirm this. But basically the idea is that, within the Bible itself, the description of this Jesus figure, even if he was an actual man who actually existed, we know that the Bibles were heavily written, heavily edited and embellished and things like that. So even if an actual Jesus, a man existed, what do we actually know about this man? Because the Bible is so full of embellishments and things, and so we can't be certain that what is attributed to him actually happened. Even going beyond the miracles and the divine things, even the things that he said or that he taught, how do we know that those things are actually true? Because the only account we have of that is the Bible itself, and we know that that's not really a reliable source. So that's another perspective, is that, okay, so even if this man actually existed, what do we actually know about this man?